Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sammy, and I'm the Program Director at Infocom Asia. First of all, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you here today for taking time to join the webinar. So the topic for today's webinar is AR/VR user experience sharing from early adopters. As we know, more and more companies are planning to invest in AR/VR enterprise solutions, but how to assess the impact of AR/VR on your business and what are the biggest hurdles for mass adoption of AR/VR? Today, we're very fortunate to have with us two excellent speakers who will share their experiences. Before I invite our first presenter, I'd like to share some housekeeping rules. Please take note that if you do have any questions, please type your questions in the Q&A box. A recording of today's session will be available for download next Monday. So thank you once again, and I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Chaitanya, Chief Technology Officer and Head of Emerging Media from Whistling Woods International, India. So Chaitanya has over 2-decade career spanning the film and creative arts industry. He's currently the Vice President at Whistling Woods International, India's premier film and creative arts institute. He also serves as a Chief Technology Officer for the institute and heads the Emerging Media Department. Today, he will share with us how to create the first generation of cinematic VR filmmakers from India. Over to you, Chantaya.
Hi, hello everybody. Good afternoon. Like Sammy mentioned, I'm the emerging media head for India's Premier Film School. And what I want to do today is talk to you about how the school has gone about creating India's first generation of cinematic VR filmmakers. Now, we look at virtual reality in two ways. One is using virtual reality as a tool, as a technology. And second is using virtual reality as a platform. So when I say as a platform, I mean for content consumption. So theaters, cinema is a platform, television is a content platform, digital, so OTT, web, YouTube, Netflix, etc. They're all content consumption platforms. And then the fourth content consumption platform is VR. So how do you look at VR as a content consumption platform and create the first generation of filmmakers who can create that kind of content, right? So I'm going to take you through a quick presentation on it. Right. So this is the Whistling Woods Jio VR Lab. For those who are not aware, Reliance Jio is India's largest telecom operator. It is also one of the fastest growing media and entertainment companies. We've essentially, it's a collaboration between the institute and the Reliance Jio as a corporate in order to set up this lab and educate the first generation of content creators. So why a cinematic VR lab first? So India has huge potential for VR. We have over 1.1 billion mobile connections. We are India's largest free access internet using country at 700 million plus users. Over 400 million smartphones, of which about 300 million are VR ready. So even for smartphone based VR headset market, we're really large. We have the world's largest per capita weekly video watching country. We have, on an average, it's 9 hours per person per week. We have one of the lowest mobile data costs in the world, and huge per capita data consumption. So there's potential for VR in India, but why would we set up a lab in order to tap this potential? Because VR is the fourth content consumption platform after film, TV, and OTT. But narrative experiences for VR are at a very nascent stage. There are some of them that are being created, and you do have film festivals which have VR sections, but as a wide mainstream audience, having lots and lots of cinematic VR content is still in the pipeline. We don't really have multiple platforms for VR content like we do for, like you have Netflix and Amazon and so on and so forth all over the world. We don't have any major global platforms for VR except for, one or two. So we have to write the curriculum for cinematic VR and then educate and train both the film industry graduates as well as industry professionals. So the way that the school approached VR is we first looked at the problem statement, then we decided on a process, and then we approached cinematic VR first from the technology and the business sides. And once we had locked those down, then we looked at it from the content and the craft of content creation. So this was the problem statement for VR in 2017. Right? There was standards, there was security, there was acquisition and data management, there was file formats, software pipeline, computing requirements. Then there was content creation in narrative, right? Which is entertainment related, both fiction and non-fiction. And then we had to build awareness. So what we decided to do was we decided to keep the last two as our focus. And, as you can see in red, I have mentioned what has happened with these other problems and how the VR world as a whole has come together to solve it, right? So whether it's with standards bodies or whether it's with MPEG or so on and so forth for file formats. And, these are the two areas that we decided to focus on. So what is the process of the lab? The process was to set up infrastructure and technology to build a always current tech pipeline in VR. So whenever there was a new piece of hardware or software, the lab had to have it because we had to work on the latest. Then we built out a lab team. We trained ourselves, and we built out an advisory board who we relied on to give us global best practices inputs. We conducted multiple training workshops as well as, both physical as well as online to enable our lab team to be at a stage where we could start creating content. Then we made a lot of VR content. We shot a lot of VR content with strong academic oversight, and then we distilled out best practices from this content that we created to build the first ever, or one of the first ever frameworks for cinematic VR in India. Once we had this, then we started to educate and train other students and industry professionals and build a community. So this was the process that we followed. These are the tech partners that we started working with. So, multiple global media and entertainment technology companies working both in VR and, not in VR. We stabilized our technology pipeline. So for acquisition, we ranged from 2 camera lenses to 6 camera lenses. And we ensured that we had in-camera stabilization and in-camera stitching. The production, post-production tech pipeline included both local and cloud stitching. We had an edit and effects pipeline using existing softwares. All of this is using existing tech that was available. So the way that we looked at it as ourselves is we are not a technology company. We are not here to create new tech. We are here to use the existing tech and create great workflows and workflow pipelines. Right? Same thing for finishing export in required formats. How would we distribute the content? So how do you build out a pipeline where people can comfortably download the video and playback or stream? And then we looked at it on multiple displays. So headsets for cell phones, wireless connected head-mounted displays or standalones, Oculus Go and Oculus Quest, the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive, which are tethered, connected to computer headsets, and the Sony PSVR. Sony PSVR was limited usage because they're not a widely widely used content for non-Sony content at this point of time. We built out a pretty great advisory board. So the head of Intel VR, the head of Adobe Immersive, multiple cinematic VR filmmakers, and multiple gaming engine specialists. Some of the research that we looked at. So there's a global 2019 consumer study which spoke about how the people who had consumed VR content were more likely than the general population to consume VR content. So it gave us a good indication that VR works, that it's not a letdown. And this ensured that we continue to approach the area with strength. The business models that we looked at in VR, so you have starting from location-based experiences, which is the highest in value and the lowest in volume. Then we had the tethered and seated and multi-sensory experiences, where essentially you're sitting in a pod and you've got a VR headset, and there's noise and sound and wind and smell and all these things that come in, which are can be narrative but can also be experiential otherwise. And then you have tethered head-mounted displays, which are just simple head-mounted displays which you wear and you either walk around or you don't walk around. And you have wireless connected HMD. So these are the various business models that VR sits in at various stages of a value volume mix. The most important for us was content platforms, since we are talking about the creative and the craft. So if you look at film, TV, digital, and VR, the key answer, the key question that we needed to answer was, what is going to be the USP of VR content, right? So as of now, immersive and interactive is all we know. So how do we, through our learning and through our teaching and through our research, how do we actually build out a strong USP for cinematic VR content? And for this, again, don't go by. There's a lot of content on the slide. Doesn't really matter. The key question that we started with is, what are we trying to do? And what we were essentially trying to do was to talk about senses and how immersion as a sense appeals to the viewer. In order to understand immersion, you have to first look at all the other senses that are in play. So typically what we have been told, what everybody believes, is that we have only 5 primary senses. We actually don't. We have more than 5, right? We have 27 senses in all, with immersion being the 28th sense. There are multiple types of immersions. So there's physical immersion and there's cognitive immersion. And that is something that we had to study. We also had to look at where VR was in the global Dunning-Kruger curve. So Dunning-Kruger is a psychology curve which tracks the emergence of any new technology and any new content workflow on 2 axes of confidence and knowledge / skills. So when you don't know anything, you have no confidence. And then the world learns a little bit about something, and suddenly the confidence shoots through the roof and you're standing on top of Mount Stupid. And then you learn a little bit more, and then you realize that, oh, you know what, actually, I don't know anything. And then you kind of crash into the valley of despair, and then wisdom starts to set in, and you get onto the slope of enlightenment. So this is where VR is at this point of time. The world and the industry has gone through this journey from 2014-15 through 2017. And this is where we are. So it's very important for us to catch the VR as it was coming out of the valley of despair, so that we were able to make sure that we're not, on a downhill slope, because this is not the time where you want to start and pick up any new technology or workflow, because it has multiple other issues when it comes to acceptance by the larger industry. Then we looked at what are the key aspects or what are the key elements of content experience, which is these 3: agency, speed, and emotion, and how a combination of these either makes a particular piece of content more game-like or more film-like or more life-like. So when I say life, it's essentially live, L-I-V-E. So you can't really adjust the speed of something that you're consuming live, but you do have full control over what you are watching, and it's an emotional experience. In the case of film, you have no control as a viewer. Somebody else has made the film and somebody else has written it and a bunch of actors are acting in it, but you can control the speed of consumption, and it's an emotional experience, right? Same thing, game, you have full agency of what happens in the game, even as a user, and you can control the speed of consumption. but it's a limited emotional experience. Let's just say it's a no emotional experience. It has limited emotion. So to look at these elements of content experience and how do I build this into the type of content being created. Production complexity is essentially a combination of three factors, which is reality, interaction, and movement. So depending on how much of these three I'm giving to the user, the production complexity either gets high or gets low. So, after doing all these and generating all this work and all this training over the last 2.5, 3 years, we've reached a stage where the VR lab is today the thought leader for cinematic VR in India. We're India's first institution with a cinematic VR curriculum and a teaching methodology, which is part of a university approved degree curriculum. We've built a strong network with both global and domestic immersive content ecosystem. And the ability to leverage this knowledge for both teaching and content creation is something that we really are happy about. We've been conducting many workshops for both industry professionals as well as our students. And now we've built it into the curriculum so that the first batch of cinematic VR filmmakers will graduate in 2021. So one thing I didn't put in there because it's not something you put is I am also the co-chair or the co-leader for cinematic VR for the VR AR Association for Asia Pacific. So that's something that we're quite happy and proud about as well. We got a lot of media coverage, and this is a front page coverage of what it is that we are doing, and then a bunch of some of the work that we've done in education, some of the work that we're doing in documenting stuff that's happening in our city. So we have in Mumbai currently one of the world's longest and largest single metro lines that's fully underground is being constructed. So we are shooting the making of the Mumbai Metro 3 line in VR. What have been our key learnings as of now? Right? There is no such thing as a VR expert as of now. Everybody's learning, everybody's there, everybody's at a stage where they're still trying to figure out their own understanding of this pipeline. So the thing to avoid is stop calling yourself an expert, because the moment you call yourself that, you stop learning. As of now, there are only 5 rules in VR. Don't bore people, don't confuse people, don't give people whiplash, don't make people vomit, and back up your data. Right? Because it's such an emerging field, because it's yet to be solidified and stabilized, we shouldn't be laying down too many rules. The other thing that we learned is that a VR film is essentially a VR experience. You can't really call it a film because the story, which is kind of the main area of a film, is just one part. The visuals, the sound, the immersion, the interactivity, all these are equally important to a VR film or a VR experience than the story is. So all of them have to be worked on together during the writing process of the film. Cinematic grammar. So we need to, reteach or rewrite the cinematic grammar for frameless or immersive content. Because for the first time, we have captive individual viewership where, it's just one person and the content. So the ability that a filmmaker has to impact that person is high, but it's also coming with certain restrictions, like wearing of a headset and duration and those kind of things. Because it's a frameless medium, there's content all over, you have to direct attention. So directing attention is a new craft that filmmakers need to learn. And also what you need to do is, along with directing attention, comes the problem of FOMO, so fear of missing out. So because you are in a headset and there's content all around you, if you are constantly looking in one direction, there is always the fear of what am I missing out. So it makes people want to turn around a lot. So you have to make sure that your content is so compelling that you block people's intention of looking around. Right? So for that, what's also important is intuitive filmmaking. So you need to explore why and how you would look at something. And the other thing which is most important is that you have to treat every VR shot as a VFX shot, which means it needs a lot of prep, it needs a lot of planning, it needs a lot of setup. You can't take it for granted because it's a frameless medium. You have to hide crew, you have to hide lights. It's an extremely complex shooting environment. So a lot of prep is needed. So this is just some of the stuff. There's much more to come in our learnings. So what next? What are we looking at doing next? We're looking at going from just cinematic VR to 6 DoF volumetric capture. So that's the next thing. We will be building our game engines as a base for creation of narrative and immersive experiences. We are building out a virtual production workflow as we speak, and we're starting to do VR immersion courses for the Indian film industry. Thank you so much. So this is my attempt at trying to give you all an overview of what we have done to build India's first generation of cinematic VR filmmakers.
Thank you very much, Chaitanya, for sharing with us. So I definitely have learned something new from you. So my first question to you is, what were the biggest hurdles you have faced when building up and disseminating the cinematic VR education?
So the first hurdle was if people would take it seriously, because what had happened is 2017 is when VR was at its absolute low. Over the last 2 years before that, a lot of investment had gone into both hardware and software, and it still wasn't up to high quality consumer experiences. So there was that uphill challenge that we need to uh, basically talk to people and tell them that what, one of the reasons why VR is where it is right now is because it's not been approached properly, and that a particular approach is needed in order to make sure that this fourth platform grows and builds up appropriately. So that was the first hurdle. The second hurdle was to essentially break down or unlearn or make people unlearn a lot of the cinematic grammar that they had already learned, in order to relearn how to create immersive content. Because for such a long time, all filmmakers have had the crutch of a frame, right? So that everything is in the frame is visible, and anything that's not in the frame is not visible. Even here when we are talking, right, you can see there's a frame around me, and everything that's not in the frame you can't see. But that's not the case for VR. If it's a VR shot, everything is always visible. So how do I make sure that I'm either utilizing this wide canvas I have appropriately, or I am ensuring that people look at what I want them to see when I want them to see it? So this is an extremely difficult and a different craft that you need to teach everybody: writers, directors, actors. So for example, actors, right? Actors are used to, the moment they are off frame, they tend to relax, they tend to go out of character. But in the case of VR, you are never off frame. As long as the shot is rolling or the scene is rolling, you are always in frame. Which is why even if you are no longer the principal viewing thing that is happening, you still have to be in frame, right? So we had to teach actors a lot of stage and theatrical style of acting. So there was multiple journeys that we had to take each individual craft and each individual vertical through, in order to make sure that they actually got it right. So I think adoption and getting people to get used to this was probably the biggest hurdle.
Oh, sounds like a lot of hard work has been done there.
Thanks so much.
Okay, my next question is, what role do you think VR will play in the content world going forward? Will it take away from the cinema?
Yeah, I think it's a massive impact that VR will have. So it'll have impact in two ways. One is where it is used as a tool So for example, things that you used to do existing before pre-VR, you will now do them in VR much more effectively and with much more impact. So like Scott showed us before, they were doing training before VR, and now they're taking the same training, the same elements, the same learning outcomes, the same impact, maybe more. And once they put it onto the VR tool or the VR pipeline, the impact is significantly higher. Same thing for deep sea drilling or many such dangerous activities, right? Also, good simulations or education, right? Because VR is what is called a captive individual medium. There is no distraction when you're wearing a VR headset. So it's great for teaching students, especially those who have attention deficit disorder or learning disabilities and they get distracted a lot, who have short attention spans. Because there is no distraction, all they are seeing is content, you're able to get through to them much better and much faster. So there's deeper learning, faster, deeper learning. So you may not need 40 minutes to teach one particular thing to a student. If it's in VR, you may be able to do it in 15 and 20 minutes, right? So it makes education far more efficient. So similarly, there are many more areas where VR will be used as a tool to augment the impact of something that is already being done. That is one part. The second part is where VR will actually be used as a content consumption platform, right? So like you have OTT content which you can consume on your phone or on your television or on the laptop. Similarly, there will be VR content which you will be able to consume on your phone or on a VR headset or on a simple, simply wearable VR headset. A lot of the VR headsets, say 2 years ago, it was like a big shoebox on your head. That's not the case anymore. Right now, you have far more lighter, far more agile, nimble VR headsets that have hand tracking and easy to use. Right. So once that starts to kick in, you will have consumer content consumption in VR. People who are traveling in a train or in a bus or in a flight, like they're watching content on their phone, they'll be watching content in VR, right? So that is the larger, that is the much more unique experience that people will be able to have, where they'll be able to watch both fiction and non-fiction narrative content in VR. So it's great for that area of work. So, and the third it's already started to have an impact, but it'll have an impact even more, is in the field of gaming. Because gaming will get more immersive, gaming will get more interactive. You will be able to, with full body suits, you will be able to have a much more physical experience of gaming, than you have sitting in front of a computer. So I think a lot of these 3-4 areas where VR is used as a narrative and a experiential platform, they will add to all the other utilitarian usage or uses of VR that we are seeing. So I think it's going to have a significant impact over the next 10 odd years.
Agree. I do agree that it's going to have a significant impact on our work and life in the future, right?
Yes.
I definitely want to learn more about VR. Okay, cool.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Chaitanya, for your sharing and your especially the sharing with us the key learning lessons from your experience.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate that. So I would like to remind attendees that if you do have any questions, please key in your question in the Q&A box so we can forward to the speakers accordingly. At the same time, the poll questions are open, so do feel free to participate in the poll questions. So once again, I'd like to thank our two speakers, Mr. Chaitanya and Scott, for sharing their expertise with us today. Thank you very much. And we do have learned a lot from both of you.